I'm going to talk about these two in a second, but first I want to talk about this Eachine pair of goggles. So I'm always on the hunt for a really good low-cost pair of goggles to recommend because so many people ask me, and I also think that this general genre of FPV goggle could potentially yield the best experience for us, not the actual goggle, like the two-screen goggle, but this potential genre, and I'll get to that at the very end, and I really hope it exists at some point in the future. So real quick, let's go over this thing. This is the Eachine. I have no idea what it's called. As you can see, I've taken it completely apart, and the reason I've taken it apart is because I tried to fix it. So first of all, look at the size comparison between this and a pair of Fat Sharks. It's not really a whole lot bigger, and that's again something I'm going to talk about at the very end. But just real quick, let's talk about this. So the screen is fine. The reception is totally fine. It's not real diversity, it's fake diversity. As you can see, there's only one receiver module, but there's two antennas. I don't know whether they're good or bad. The reception seems pretty fine. The brightness on the screen is totally fine. It does have auto search. Everything's great about this. The problem is that the Fresnel lens in this thing is just not focused at all, and you can't actually see the screen when you stick your head in the goggles. So I took it apart to try and move this lens somewhere, and then I just saw everything. I'm just like, this is a waste of time. So don't get this goggle. It is a really attractive pair because while the resolution is low, it does work fine, and the resolution is totally fine to use, but it unfortunately isn't functional because you can't actually see the screen because it's just too blurry. I had a number of people try it out, and they all said about the same thing. So let's get on to this pair of Skyzones. So this is the Skyzone 02X, as you can see here, and this is going to be a really quick review because I don't think this is a really high-profile goggle product, but I do believe that it's a new goggle product from Skyzone. I think, I'm not sure, although it's not really so new in the industry because this kind of setup has been around for a long time in the Fat Shark Dominator V3s, which are now discontinued completely. This is my primary goggle that I use. It is the only goggle that I actually use myself, and I do not prefer any of the HD versions of the Dominators. That includes the HDO. I would prefer my own Dominator V3 or the Dominator V3 over the HDO, and again, I'll go over that later on. But let's first talk about this Skyzone pair of goggle. So this, like I said, it's not going to be a long review. It's very easy to review this goggle. Every single thing about this goggle, except for a couple of things, is better than a pair of Fat Sharks. Like, a lot better than a pair of Fat Sharks. To begin with, the casing is absolutely such a huge step up. The plastic is white. It's not painted over black like the Fat Sharks are at this point, I believe. But there is also no light leak, which white casing usually leads to light leak. There's no light leak that I have found. The fit is better for my face. It's got slightly more nose space. You have just, because it has a built-in receiver as well, which I usually don't like, but you get all of these functions on screen that are so nice to use, and they work so well. And you also have the ability to change the fan speed inside the goggle, and that fan is freaking strong. If you turn that up past level 5, your eyes dry out because there's too much wind blowing in your eyes. So the fan is super effective, and I assume that's why it's got this Batman logo on it. This is also made of aluminum, which I would like to think that somebody decided to make it aluminum because it sort of has a cooling property, and it makes the air that flows through it maybe a little bit cooler, so that cold air is coming into your eyes, not hot air from the hot sun. It has room for inserts for your diopters if you need the diopters. The lenses are totally fine. I can fit my head in here. I can see pretty much the whole screen just like I can the Dominator V3. The screen resolution is very comparable to the Dominator V3. It's 854 by 480, I believe. The Dominator V3 is 800 by 480. I'll get to the screens in a second. Other things about this is that it does have an on-off button that is actually an on-off button. Like, it actually turns the thing on and off, so you can leave the goggles plugged in. The battery strap or the head strap is really nice quality. Like, I'm gonna take this strap off and put it on my Fat Sharks. That's how nice of quality this head strap is. I have used a number of the Hot Dog FPV straps and whatnot, and I know it's stupid, but I'm really impressed with the quality of this strap. It's a really nice strap. Other things you'll note is that the SD card slot is on the bottom here. It's got a USB port and an HDMI port here. and that's HDMI in, which is great. The USB port is fantastic, and it's fantastic because when you put an SD card slot in this SD card slot, which, by the way, you can get in and out really, really easily. If anybody has a pair of Fat Sharks, you know you can't get your stupid SD card out of that slot too easily because it's recessed inside the bay. So it's really nice that it's accessible here. You can leave your SD card in there and just plug your goggles into the computer and get your files off the SD card, which is just incredible. It also has a video outline, which means you can send it out to other DVRs. And that's a very important point because the first negative thing about this goggle compared to the Dominator V3 is that the DVR is actually worse than the Dominator V3. I don't know how they managed to make it worse, but it is genuinely an awful DVR. You will not use it. If you do want a DVR, you will need to have a video out. I did not test it with an external DVR. I don't know if it will actually dim the signal when you send out. Anybody that knows about signal dimming will appreciate that tip. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But for now, I'm really happy that it has that AV out because my Dominators do not have that AV out. And everything else is pretty much the same. The diversity is not what I'd prefer. It's not like a rapid fire diversity. It's a regular diversity, but I am using my rapid fire in regular mode most of the time, so I'm totally cool with the diversity on this thing. The range is totally fine. I mean, it's kind of this diversity module thing has kind of gotten a little bit crazy. However, I wouldn't recommend cheaping out on your diversity module. I get to value propositions at the end. The one and only biggest issue with this goggle, which is really unfortunate, is that the screen, while it is higher resolution, everything is great about it, it does not have the same contrast ratio as the Dominator V3 Fat Sharks that I typically use. What contrast ratio means and what that gets you is the ability to actually see where you're going, and that's very important because that's what we're trying to do. And so if you look at kind of like whites, they're kind of a little blown out. If you look at darks, they're kind of a little bit overly dark, and you just generally don't have a wide dynamic range of contrast to be able to see where you're going, and that's unfortunately where the Fat Sharks do kind of win out, and that's where I kind of draw the line. However, I would say that if I only had this pair of goggles and I did not have a pair of Fat Sharks, I would not notice the washout or the poor contrast of the screen, and it would be totally fine. The other area that's a little bit annoying is that it does crop or just kind of cut off the bottom of your screen just a little bit of your FPV feed. You can still see an OSD all the way at the bottom, but it does kind of cut that little bottom row off just a tidbit, which is just frustrating and annoying. So the version I have here is the version that has the front camera on it. I would not recommend getting that version. It's a complete gimmick. Don't even bother with it. But the one that doesn't come with it is on sale for $270 right now. They say it's going to go up in price. I don't think it's going to go up in price, and it's going to stick around at $270. And for $270, I guess it's an okay deal. However, this is where I'm going to talk about the value proposition. So goggles are a product that you do not buy often. I have had my pair of Fat Sharks for 4 years now, 5 years now, and I've sent them back to Fat Shark 3 times for repairs. They have repaired them, thankfully, and they are still functioning to this day. And I have to say, as much as I absolutely despise the Fat Shark company, they do make a product that has really high reliability. I have used this pair of goggles at least every other day for 4 years, and there are very few products aside from like a cell phone or like an MP3 player or something that I've put through that duty cycle and has been able to hold up. I mean, I have to say that is very impressive. Nothing drastic has broken on my goggles, and the repairs that I have sent it back for weren't really repairs. They were just issues that the goggle had from the beginning that they accepted back to repair, which is nice of them. So I haven't had any problems with it. This pair of Dominator V3s has been discontinued, which is really unfortunate because I personally believe that this is the best pair of goggles that Fat Shark has ever made. And that's because I absolutely hate the optics in all of the HD goggles, including the HDO. I do not understand why the screen is blurry completely. Some people don't have a problem with that. Some people prefer the blurry edges. Some people only care about the very center of the screen being sharp. Some people have eyes that don't see the blur at all, or actually do have the ability to see the whole screen. For me, and I'm pretty sure the majority of people out there, if you look for the blurry edges, you'll see the blurry edges, and then you can't unsee them ever again. So sorry if I ruined your pair of Fat Sharks for you, and that's the main reason why I cannot use any of the HD version of the Fat Shark goggles, including the HDO. Now, what they did with the HDO was that they made the screen smaller. They're using the same optics. The screen is just smaller because that's what was available to them from Sony, because those are the OLED screens that they could acquire. Now, something that they did on the HD V1 or V2 or whatever was that they started including -2 diopters with the goggles themselves to kind of help with the blurry edges. Now, those did help a little bit. However, all they were doing was shrinking the screen, so your massive FOV just shrunk down. I don't know what's different about the optics in the the Dominator V3, but they are genuinely different because the field of view in this goggle is not drastically smaller than the other HD goggles. The HDO actually has a smaller screen. The HDO field of view is actually the same as this, except it's a 4:3 screen, not a 16:9 screen. This is a 16:9 screen. But something is interesting about these optics, because I can see my entire screen very clearly, very sharply, from edge to edge, no problems, and that's what I like, and that's why I use these goggles. Now, these goggles can still be found for about $300, and if you're going to spend $270 on these Skyzones, unfortunately, I would prefer to spend a little bit more money and get the Dominator V3s with a rapid fire or the upcoming TBS module. Now, like I said, goggles are not something you buy every day, and if you're just getting into FPV, you would save money if you just got the best pair of goggles available, which will probably be the Orca goggles if they ever actually come out, which they're supposedly very close to coming out. I will have those goggles hopefully very soon. I'm extremely excited about them, but they are $500. I mean, a pair of HDOs are also $500, but like I said, I've used these goggles almost every day for 4+ years. That's a long time. Or like whenever the Dominator V3 came out is when I got my goggles, which I'm pretty sure is about 3.5, 4 years ago or something like that. This is not something you buy often. I think it's okay to spend money on it. It's also something that is absolutely instrumental to your FPV experience. Another reason why I would recommend just not going cheap. So I also recommend the rapid fire module or the upcoming TBS module, because those will be the top modules in the industry, and that is, once again, something that is absolutely instrumental to your ability to fly. They are the best modules, and I would recommend them because it does improve your experience, and you do want something absolutely reliable. So the only kind of goggles that I really recommend are either the absolute cheapest of cheapest or the top end. There's essentially no point in anything in the middle unless you're sort of like me and just prefer the Dominator V3 because it just fits your face and your eyeballs better than anything else. So now let's take another look at this pair of goggles, the Eachine goggles. And what I saw in this and what I wanted to talk about, and the reason why I was so interested in it, is because look at the size comparison. I mean, these Skyzones are actually genuinely smaller than the Fat Shark, slightly smaller than the Fat Shark. So I'll try to put them side by side. You can see they're slightly thinner, just overall slightly smaller, slightly lighter as well, just a little bit less. But if you compare this pair of Eachines to that is not a huge difference. Yeah, you might look stupid with these on, but you look stupid with these on also. Like, nobody's gonna look cool like flying FPV, at least no time soon. But look, it's not a whole lot bigger. And so my concept for an FPV goggle, and the reason I'm going to point this out is because I've been researching this for 3-4 years now, and I cannot find the single component that would make what I want possible. So my concept for what I believe the optimal FPV goggle for cost, value, performance, and experience would be is something that has one screen, not something that has two screens like a traditional goggle. And that's for a number of reasons, which I'm not going to get to, but something that has one screen just like this, the one screen would have to be smaller than this. This is a 2.7 inch screen. By my calculations, I need a 1 to 1.5 inch screen that has a pretty high brightness, and I would love it to have really great contrast ratio and colors, and all the quality of the screen needs to be good and needs to have pretty good brightness in there as well. But that 1 to 1.5 inch diagonal size is just a size that doesn't exist in the resolution that I need, which is at least 800 by 600. We don't need HD resolution. 800 by 600 is going to give us 100% of the resolution that we're going to get out of our analog feed if we are to stick to an analog feed in the coming years. So if you had a screen that was 1.1 to 1.5 inches, you could bring that screen way up to your face and use a pair of or a set of lenses to magnify that screen up to whatever FOV you want, while making sure that your eyes don't need to adjust to the screen as if you're looking at something 3 inches away from your face, which is what this pair of goggles really does make you do. Any pair of goggles that uses this kind of a Fresnel lens, when you put it on, you'll probably notice that you have a little bit of a headache because your eyes are straining to try and see the screen. Your eyes have to focus heavily on something very close. You're not getting enough compensation with the lens. The lens is not actually doing a great job in, putting the screen where it needs to be for your eyes to be healthy. And that is a very important point, because eye health is something that I definitely think about because I do use my goggles so darn much. So if you did have one single screen, you wouldn't need two screens, and that is the most expensive component. Contrary to popular belief, the lenses in these things are not very expensive, and lenses are not that expensive to produce. I've produced scientific grade lenses for less than $1 a piece. They're not even 50 cents a piece. I mean, I literally have a product that I've worked on the market that has scientific grade lenses for sale. It's a $400 or $500 product, but it's using a lens that costs less than 10 cents to make, and it's made in Arizona. It's not even made in China or anywhere else. Made one by one in Arizona. And lenses are not drastically expensive. Yes, they can be very expensive, but for this particular range of product, I don't think it's necessary to have an expensive lens. So if you had a small screen, you had a single lens or a pair of lenses or something of that sort, you could magnify the screen and put it where it needs to be for your eyes to focus appropriately. And you can also put it in a housing that's very similar to this, that's very small, that's very reasonable, that fits in your bag, in whatever you're using, and it would be really convenient because you're cutting a whole lot of the cost out of the goggles. Because forget the DVR, you just have a video out, people can use their own DVRs, people will start making HD DVRs or 60 frames per second DVRs as they already exist, and you'll piggyback on your own DVR. You don't need to have a receiver module, you just plug in the external receiver module, because that's what I would prefer. And so you now have a bare bones product that's just an empty casing with a screen and a lens, and that cannot cost a lot of money. And all you need to do is find that screen. And so I have been hunting and searching, and I've talked to so many companies about this darn screen, looked at watch screens, looked at a whole bunch of other device screens, because the trick would be to look for a product that is already on the market that has a screen that's suitable to use. Because if you do try to make a custom screen, it's going to cost way too much, and you need to buy an absolute minimum of hundreds of thousands to make it cost effective. And unfortunately, our market is not big enough for hundreds of thousands of screens to be purchased to produce such a product. Hopefully in the future it will be, but at this point it's not, and that's also the reason why the Orca goggles are so expensive. What they've done is pretty darn incredible to put together a pair of goggles that has the quality and the features and everything in it, and be able to offer it at the price they have. I know the margin on that thing is probably not very high because of the components that they're using, and that's also why I'm guessing that they did a Kickstarter launch to try and capture more market. And the goggles are also made for more than just FPV. I'll get to that when those goggles come out. Anyways, that's my concept of goggles in general, and what I wish we would have. Because if you had one screen, you could spend more money on that one screen and get a higher quality screen, which will give you a better experience. Make sure it's 800 by 600. You can also tailor the optics for that screen to make sure everything is in focus. You're also only using one screen, so you don't need to deal with two eyes and screens. You don't have to deal with convergence. It simplifies the entire product. You could probably fit your glasses in it as well. You could easily put on not diopters, but corrective lenses in the whole system, because you're dealing with one big box. You're not dealing with two little tiny optics and two little tiny systems. And it's one big box, but it's not actually all that big, because as you're looking at this pair of Eachine goggles, they're totally suitable for use and carry and everything. This is just a bad product. Don't get this one. So there are a couple of low-end or cheap goggles that are on the market that are pretty good. Eachine makes one. Actually, Eachine makes two. One of them, which is in my description below, which is my preferred low-cost goggle solution. And I hope that there's more coming. But I do know that Top Sky is coming out with another edition of their low-cost goggle. The previous one was $100, but it was absolute rubbish. The screen was just no good. There was ghosting. It was huge FOV. Not a good option. The new one I hope is better, but we'll see. That one is coming. I have that one on the way as well. And of course, I'm waiting for the Orca goggles, and I'm really, really darn excited about the Orca goggles as well. Take care. Don't forget to floss your teeth. Flossing is very important. Yeah, I hope to have more on this matter moving forward. Bye.